High Commander Zixtal's upper appendages trembled as they reviewed the casualty reports. The holographic displays surrounding their command post flickered with red warning indicators. An entire elite Zixatheri combat unit, completely annihilated. Not by a superior alien force, not by advanced technology, but by a small group of human militia defenders on a backwater mining colony. Impossible, they muttered, their crystalline eyes refracting the harsh light of the emergency beacons. The Zixatheri Combat Division had never suffered such a devastating loss in their 1,000-year history of galactic warfare. Their warriors were bioengineered for combat perfection, equipped with the finest weapons in known space, and trained in combat doctrines refined across centuries. The security footage from the incident played on a loop before them. A mere 17 humans, armed with primitive projectile weapons and improvised explosives, had systematically destroyed a force of over 200 Zixatheri warriors. The humans moved with a savagery and precision that defied conventional combat logic, using their environment, limited resources, and what appeared to be suicidal tactics to devastating effect. High Commander, Subdirector Vexmore interrupted, entering the command center with an urgent shuffle. We've captured one of them, a human military officer. She was found observing our forward base on Outpost 7. Zixtal's attention snapped away from the displays. Bring her in. Perhaps we can finally understand what we're dealing with. The human they brought before them was surprisingly small compared to a Zixatheri warrior. Lieutenant Amanda Rodriguez, according to her identification tags, stood barely 2/3 the height of her captors. Her dark hair was regulation short, and her uniform bore the insignia of Earth's United Defense Force. What caught Zixtal's attention was her expression. A subtle smile played across her lips, despite being bound and surrounded by alien warriors. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Zixtal addressed her, the universal translator converting their clicks and whistles into human English. You understand why you're here. I assume it has something to do with what happened to your elite unit on New Haven Colony, Rodriguez replied, emphasizing the word elite with what the translator identified as sarcasm. 200 of your best against 17 miners and 3 off-duty military personnel. Not your finest moment. The casual disrespect in her tone sent a ripple of agitation through the Zixatheri guards. Zixtal raised an appendage to silence their chittering protests. You will help us understand human combat capabilities. Your species' apparent prowess in warfare requires further study. Rodriguez's smile widened slightly. Study? You think you can understand human warfare by putting us under a microscope? That's your first mistake. We have the most advanced research facilities in the galaxy, Subdirector Vexmore interjected. Our combat analysis protocols are unmatched. And that's your second mistake, Rodriguez continued, shifting her weight almost imperceptibly. You think warfare can be reduced to numbers and analysis. Tell me, did your combat protocols predict I'd allow myself to be captured? The question hung in the air for a moment before alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Zixtal's communications crystal lit up with emergency signals from multiple sectors. Security barriers were failing, weapons systems were going offline, and atmospheric controls were malfunctioning across the base. Impossible, Vexmore chittered in alarm. She's been in restraints since capture. Under constant surveillance. Rodriguez's smile transformed into something predatory. Here's your first lesson about human warfare. We're never working alone. While you've been so focused on studying me, my team has been studying you. Right now, they're demonstrating why humans are the most lethal fighters you'll ever encounter. As if to punctuate her point, a distant explosion rocked the facility. The lights flickered, and in that moment of darkness, Rodriguez moved. By the time emergency power restored illumination, she had somehow slipped her restraints and disarmed the nearest guard. The speed and precision of her movement defied the combat analysis program's predictions by several orders of magnitude. Lesson 2, she announced, wielding the alien weapon with practiced ease. We're always learning. Everything you've shown me since my capture, your security protocols, your weapon systems, your tactical responses, It's all been intelligence gathering. And now, class is in session. High Commander Zixtal, watching their perfect security crumble around them, realized they had inadvertently initiated what would become the most comprehensive study of human combat capabilities in galactic history. But as Lieutenant Rodriguez demonstrated with brutal efficiency in the next few moments, the price of this knowledge would be far higher than anyone anticipated. The medical bay's containment field hummed with enough energy to hold back a rampaging Krell beast, yet Subdirector Vexmore couldn't shake the feeling it might not be sufficient. Through the shimming barrier, Major Jack Thompson lay on the examination table, his broken body testament to the crash that had brought him into their custody. 3 cracked ribs, a fractured femur, and severe internal bleeding. By any reasonable species standards, he should have been unconscious, or at least incapacitated. Instead, he was watching them. His eyes tracked each movement of the medical staff with unsettling clarity. The specimen's neural patterns are unlike anything in our database, Chief Medical Officer Rylax reported, her sensory tendrils waving in agitation. Despite catastrophic injuries, pain responses are being actively suppressed, not by medication, but through sheer mental control. Fascinating, Vexmore murmured, making notes on their data crystal. Perhaps this explains the incident on Colony World Echo 9, where injured human soldiers continued fighting despite. The alarm's shriek cut through their discussion. On the other side of the containment field, Thompson had somehow moved from the examination table to the barrier control panel. Blood dripped from reopened wounds, leaving crimson trails across the sterile floor. Containment breach impossible, the security system announced. Subject's injuries exceed mobility thresholds by 700%. Yet Thompson's fingers danced across the alien interface, his movements precise despite the visible tremors of pain racking his body. The containment field flickered. Security to Medical Bay 7. Vexmore shouted into their communicator. Maximum response. 3 ZX-30 guards burst through the doorway, their combat frames towering over the human. They raised their neural disruptors, weapons specifically calibrated to incapacitate without killing. Thompson turned to face them, and Vexmore saw something that would haunt their nightmares. He was smiling. The first guard fired. Thompson moved like liquid shadow, despite his broken leg. The neural blast missed, hitting the second guard instead. Before the first guard could adjust their aim, Thompson had closed the distance between them. What followed defied every combat algorithm in the facility's database. Using the guard's own momentum, Thompson executed a perfect throw, a technique that should have been impossible with his injuries. The guard's massive frame crashed into their companion, sending both sprawling. The third guard managed to get off 2 shots, but Thompson had already acquired their fallen companion's weapon. Remarkable, Rylax whispered, her medical sensors recording everything. His adrenal response is off the charts. The human body is literally rewriting its own operational parameters. Through the chaos, Vexmore noticed something else. Thompson wasn't just fighting. He was learning. Each movement adapted to the guard's combat patterns, each strike more efficient than the last. Within moments, 3 of the facility's elite warriors lay unconscious, and a severely injured human stood victorious, now armed with their weapons and armor. You're probably wondering how I did that, Thompson said, checking the neural disruptor's charge with familiar ease. Want to know the secret? He adjusted the weapon's settings with casual expertise, despite never having handled one before. Vexmore found themselves backing away. Our analysis indicated such combat performance was physically impossible in your condition. That's the thing about humans, Thompson replied, securing the last piece of stolen armor. We don't much care what your analysis says is impossible. Pain. That's just data. Broken bones. That's a challenge. Your biggest mistake was assuming we operate under the same limitations as other species. Security reinforcements would arrive any moment, but Thompson seemed unconcerned. He had positioned himself perfectly to control all approaches to the medical bay. For us, combat isn't just about physical capability. He continued, his breathing labored but controlled. It's about will, determination, the absolute refusal to submit, no matter the cost. You can break our bodies, but that just makes us more dangerous. As if to prove his point, he rolled his shoulders, and Vexmore heard the sickening crunch of broken ribs shifting. Thompson didn't even flinch. Now, he said, the captured weapon humming to life in his hands, let's see how your combat algorithms handle this. The reinforcements never stood a chance, and in the aftermath, as Vexmore reviewed the security footage, they began to understand a terrifying truth. Humans didn't just break the laws of combat. They rewrote them entirely. Colonel Emily Hayes stood at the makeshift command center deep within Colony World Delta 7's mining complex, her fingers tracing the holographic map of the tunnels. 600 civilian miners huddled in the lower levels, counting on her small military detachment to protect them. Outside, the ZX-30 invasion force had already breached the outer defenses, their superior numbers and weaponry making conventional resistance futile. Status report, she demanded, her voice steady despite the distant rumble of alien artillery. Lieutenant Sarah Cooper wiped mining dust from her tactical display. They've sealed all surface exits, Colonel. 37 ships in orbit. Ground forces number approximately 8,000. They're moving heavy excavation equipment into position. They think they can dig us out. Hayes allowed herself a grim smile. Good. The gathered officers exchanged glances. Their force consisted of just 23 military personnel, a security detail that had been escorting a routine supply shipment when the attack began. Their weapons were standard issue, designed for handling claim jumpers and local disputes, not alien warships. Mom, Cooper ventured. Command protocol suggests surrender when faced with. Command protocol can kiss my ass, Hayes interrupted, her eyes never leaving the map. We're not military targets to them. We're research subjects. I've seen the reports from other colonies. They're studying us, trying to understand human combat capabilities. Well, let's give them something to study. She pointed to specific sections of the mine complex. Cooper, get me the mining foreman. Martinez, I want every piece of industrial equipment cataloged. Jackson, find our demolitions expert. The rest of you, gather every able-bodied miner who's handled excavation charges. The next hour was a frenzy of activity. Under Hayes' direction, mining equipment was modified into makeshift weapons. Drilling rigs became mobile gun platforms. Plasma cutters were recalibrated into devastating short-range weapons. Most importantly, they prepared the tunnels. When the first ZX-30 assault team breached the upper level, they'd found it empty. Their sensors detected human life signs deeper in the complex, but something was interfering with detailed scans. The alien commander ordered a full advance, confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. That's when Hayes sprung her trap. The first tunnel collapse took out an entire company of ZX-30 warriors. The second redirected their forces into a killing zone where modified mining lasers cut through their advanced armor like paper. When they tried to pull back, they found their retreat cut off by precisely placed explosions. They're adapting, Cooper reported, watching the tactical display. Second wave is using shield generators. Our modified weapons can't penetrate. Hayes nodded, as if she'd expected this. Initiate Phase 2. Release the primary coolant lines. The temperature in the affected tunnels dropped to lethal levels within seconds. The ZX-30 shields, designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles, did nothing against the environmental attack. Those that survived the cold found themselves facing miners in environmental suits, wielding tools they used for years in the planet's hostile conditions. Third wave incoming, Martinez announced. They're using their excavation equipment to open new approaches. Perfect. Hayes activated her comm. All units, execute pattern echo. Show them why you never corner a human. What followed would be studied in alien war colleges for decades. The defenders used their intimate knowledge of the tunnel system to appear seemingly everywhere at once. Mining charges, precisely placed, turned the aliens' own seismic equipment against them. Maintenance bots, reprogrammed by quick-thinking engineers, infiltrated their lines and sabotaged their equipment. Hours turned into days. The Xtheri committed more forces, brought in specialized units, deployed their most advanced technology. Nothing worked. Every time they thought they had the humans cornered, Haze people would emerge from supposedly collapsed tunnels, strike from impossible angles, or simply vanish into the complex's labyrinth. Impossible, the Xtheri commander reported to High Command. They're trapped, outnumbered, outgunned, yet they fight as if we're the ones who are trapped. Finally, after a week of crushing losses, the Xtheri withdrew. As their ships broke orbit, Haze stood in her command center, reviewing the casualty reports. They'd lost good people, but the colony had held. More importantly, they'd sent a message. Let them study this, she told her exhausted but proud troops. Humans don't need an escape route to win. Sometimes, being cornered just means the enemy is exactly where we want them. The Xtheri Research Facility's observation chamber hummed with nervous energy as the analysts reviewed footage from the Battle of Nuturan. Senior researcher Kixville manipulated the holographic display, focusing on a particular sequence that defied their combat algorithms. Play it again, ordered High Commander Zixtal. Focus on the human designated as Staff Sergeant Michael O'Connor. The scene materialized before them. A devastated urban landscape, buildings reduced to rubble by orbital bombardment. Through the chaos, they watched O'Connor's squad engage a superior Xtheri force. The humans moved with practiced precision until a plasma burst caught Private James Wilson, severing his leg and trapping him in a collapsed structure. By all tactical analysis, this was the optimal moment to retreat, Kixville noted. Their unit's combat effectiveness had dropped below sustainable levels. Standard doctrine across all known species demands withdrawal. Instead, they watched as O'Connor did the unthinkable. Rather than retreat, he turned back. The recording showed him charging through withering fire, his combat armor already compromised from previous hits. The probability calculations are clear, a junior analyst chittered. 0% survival chance for both soldiers. Yet, they continued watching as O'Connor reached Wilson. The younger soldier was barely conscious, bleeding out rapidly. Normal medical protocols would have declared him a casualty, beyond saving in an active combat zone. But O'Connor's body camera recorded his words, "Not leaving you behind, brother. Not today." What followed stunned the alien observers. O'Connor administered emergency medical care while returning fire, his movements displaying impossible precision despite his own injuries. He improvised a pressure seal using melted plasteel from his own armor, stemming Wilson's blood loss. "Observe his neural patterns," the medical officer indicated. The human's pain responses should have incapacitated him. Instead, they're being overridden by something else. By what? Zixtal demanded. "We believe it's an emotional response. These humans, they form bonds stronger than mere military units. They call it brotherhood." The footage continued. O'Connor, carrying Wilson, navigated through enemy lines. He used to brace for cover, timed his movements between artillery strikes, and somehow maintained battlefield awareness while protecting his wounded comrade. Their neural patterns are synchronized, the medical officer noted with astonishment. Even unconscious, Wilson's vital signs stabilize in response to O'Connor's presence. It's as if they're sharing strength. The observation chamber fell silent as they watched O'Connor encounter a Xtheri elite squad. In normal circumstances, even a fully equipped human fire team would struggle against such opposition. O'Connor was alone, wounded and burdened with his injured companion. What happened next redefined the alien's understanding of human combat potential. O'Connor's body camera recorded his voice again, steady despite the situation. "Hang on, Shimmy. Almost home." He proceeded to engage the elite squad with a combination of stolen Zix-30 grenades, debris used as improvised weapons, and precision shots that seemed to defy physical limitations. The aliens watched in stunned silence as a single human, protecting his wounded companion, eliminated their most highly trained warriors. This shouldn't be possible, Kixful whispered. That's not the most remarkable part, the medical officer interjected. Look at the timestamps. O'Connor sustained these efforts for 7 hours. No rest, no support, constant combat. Our models indicate human endurance should have failed within the first hour. The final sequence showed O'Connor reaching friendly lines. Both soldiers survived. More incredibly, within weeks, they were back in combat together. Their unit effectiveness actually increased by the shared experience. High Commander Zixtal stared at the frozen image of the two soldiers, trying to comprehend what they had witnessed. How many similar incidents have we recorded? Thousands, Kixful replied. Across every engagement, humans consistently demonstrate this behavior. They call it no man left behind. It appears to be a fundamental aspect of their combat doctrine. But it's more than that. It's cultural, spiritual, almost. And this makes them more effective warriors. Beyond anything we thought possible. When fighting alone, humans are formidable. But when fighting to protect each other, Kixful paused, searching for the right words. They become something else entirely. Something our combat algorithms can't predict or quantify. Zixtal studied the final frame, where O'Connor gripped Wilson's hand in what humans called a brother's grip. Then we must revise our understanding of warfare itself. Because this isn't just combat. This is something our species has never encountered before. The classified report materialized on High Commander Zixtal's neural display, marked with the highest security clearance. Captain Rebecca Winters and her Special Forces team had just accomplished something that the Galactic Combat Research Division had deemed theoretically impossible. Display mission timeline, Zixtal commanded, their crystalline eyes refracting the holographic data streams. The first footage showed Winters' team dropping onto the ice plains of Novara 6, where temperatures plunged to -100 degrees Celsius. Standard combat doctrine required specialized environmental suits that severely limited mobility. Yet the humans wore modified standard gear, using what they called layering techniques, and something their files identified as Marine Corps cold weather training. They're not just surviving. Senior analyst Mixtor noted, they're thriving. Look at their movement patterns. No degradation in combat effectiveness, despite the extreme cold. The team traversed the frozen wasteland for 6 hours, engaging and eliminating a Zix-30 forward base. Their ability to maintain weapon accuracy in such conditions defied existing combat models. But what happened next stunned the observers even more. Within 12 hours, the same team appeared in footage from the volcanic wastes of Hedrix Prime. The temperature swing exceeded 300 degrees Celsius, yet Winters' team showed no adjustment period. Impossible, Mixtor whispered. Even our most advanced warriors require at least 48 hours to acclimate to such environmental shifts. The footage showed Winters leading her team through sulfuric gas vents and across fields of molten rock. They used the hostile terrain to their advantage, forcing their pursuers into deadly natural hazards while moving through zones that their enemies' environmental systems couldn't handle. Their biological adaptability exceeds anything in our database, the chief medical officer reported. But it's more than that. They're not just adapting. They're weaponizing the environments themselves. The next segment proved this assessment brutally accurate. The team appeared in the crushing depths of Europa's subsurface ocean, operating at pressures that should have required massive exoskeletons. Instead, they moved with frightening agility in lightweight diving gear, using the water pressure itself to create devastating shockwave weapons. Watch Captain Winters here, Zixtal indicated. She's using the thermal vents as cover, but also as a natural propulsion system. Every environmental hazard becomes a tactical advantage. Hours later, The team emerged in the razor canyons of Windfire Reach, where Category 5 storms shredded the landscape with hypersonic particles. Most species considered the planet entirely uninhabitable. Winter's team turned the lethal winds into a delivery system for their explosives, creating a cascade of destruction that obliterated their objectives. Their final phase is the most remarkable. Mixtor advanced the footage. The low-gravity dust fields of Nexus 4. The observers watched in silence as Winter's team operated in the chaotic environment where normal combat doctrines became utterly useless. The humans adapted within minutes, using the reduced gravity to execute impossible maneuvers, turning clouds of metallic dust into weapons, shields, and sensor scramblers. 5 extreme environments, Zixtal summarized. 5 completely different combat challenges. 1 human team, maintaining peak performance throughout. How? The medical officer's tendrils writhed with agitation. Their physical adaptations are impressive, but it's their cognitive flexibility that truly sets them apart. Each team member instinctively adjusts their tactics to exploit environmental conditions. They don't just overcome environmental challenges, they embrace them. The final footage showed Winters directing her team through a complex assault sequence. They moved through vacuum-exposed corridors, radiation-flooded chambers, and gravity-shifting zones with practiced ease. Their efficiency actually increased with each environmental challenge, as if the extreme conditions sparked greater creativity. Most species, Mixtor observed, seek to normalize their environment, to make it more suitable for combat. Humans do the opposite. They adapt themselves to the environment, then reshape it into a weapon. It's not just survival, it's mastery. High Commander Zixtal froze the final frame, showing Winter standing in the aftermath of their mission, her team arrayed around her in the dust storm's ethereal light. Update the combat databases. Classification. Extreme environmental specialists. Threat level. Maximum. Additional note. They paused, considering their words carefully. There is no environment too hostile for human warfare. They don't just survive anywhere. They make anywhere their battlefield. Lieutenant James Martinez sat cross-legged in his containment cell, surrounded by pieces of dismantled Zix theory technology. Through the energy barrier, a team of alien scientists watched with a mixture of fascination and horror as he reassembled their most advanced combat rifle into something entirely new. He shouldn't even be able to understand our weapon systems, lead engineer Rixtel muttered, their sensor stalks twitching nervously. The neural interface alone requires years of specialized training. Yet Martinez's fingers moved with practiced confidence, connecting circuits that were never meant to be combined. He had started with just one captured rifle 3 weeks ago. Now, scattered around him were components from various alien devices, each one stripped down and modified. Look at the power coupling, another engineer noted. He's bypassed the genetic lock completely. That's supposed to be impossible. Martinez glanced up at them, a slight smile playing across his face. You know, he said casually, your power regulation system is clever, but it's over-engineered. All these biological authentication protocols just get in the way of the weapon's true potential. The observation room's displays showed detailed scans of his work. He had somehow merged the rifle's energy core with components from a damaged shield generator, creating a hybrid system that their simulations couldn't even model. Test fire protocol initiated, the facility's AI announced. A holographic target appeared at the far end of the cell. Martinez raised the modified weapon. The first shot punched through shields rated to stop heavy artillery. The second shot curved around a barrier, displaying guidance capabilities that hadn't existed in the original design. The third shot split into multiple plasma streams, each finding its mark with devastating precision. Impossible, Rixtel whispered. He's improved our most advanced infantry weapon in ways our research division never conceived, and he did it with spare parts and primitive tools. The human lieutenant set down the weapon and stretched. Your technology is impressive, he admitted, but you're too focused on perfecting individual systems. The real potential lies in combining them in ways you never considered. Security Chief Vexnor burst into the observation room, their carapace bristling with alarm. The human prisoner in cell block 7 has weaponized our food synthesizer, and the one in block 3 turned a medical scanner into some kind of stealth field generator. They're all doing it, Rixtel realized with growing dread. Every human we've captured. They're not just using our technology. They're evolving it. Martinez had already moved on to his next project, combining components from a communications array with parts from what appeared to be an atmosphere processor. His movements were quick, intuitive, as if he could see possibilities in the technology that its creators had never imagined. "You should see what my engineer course could do with a few hours in your engine rooms," he commented, not looking up from his work. "Your ship designs are solid, but there's so much untapped potential. All these redundant safety systems, when you could be channeling that power into—" "Enough." Rixtel cut off the audio feed. "We have to stop this. Their technological innovation rate is exponential. Give them access to a single piece of our technology, and they'll turn it into a dozen new weapons." The security feeds showed similar scenes playing out across the facility. Every captured human, regardless of their military specialty, displayed an uncanny ability to understand, modify, and improve upon alien technology. They shared discoveries across cells through coded taps and subtle gestures, building a collective knowledge base that grew by the hour. High Command must be notified. Vexnor insisted. This isn't just about combat capability anymore. Their technological adaptation poses a strategic threat to our entire civilization. In his cell, Martins held up his latest creation, admiring how the modified components pulsed with energy configurations the Zeta's theory had never achieved. "You know what your biggest mistake was?" he called out to the observation room. "You assumed your technology was at its peak. Humans? We always see room for improvement. And once we start improving something—" He left the sentence unfinished, but the implications were clear. The Zeta's theory had thought their superior technology would give them an advantage in studying human combat capabilities. Instead, they had inadvertently given humanity access to a technological library that was being rapidly rewritten, improved, and weaponized in ways they could never have predicted. Senior analyst Zarkax rewound the combat footage for the 12th time, their sensory appendages twitching with growing frustration. Lieutenant Commander Diana Walker moved across the battlefield like living poetry, each motion flowing seamlessly into the next. The display showed multiple combat-style overlays, trying to categorize her movements. "Impossible to classify," Zarkax muttered, adding another notation to their already extensive report. "She's using elements of at least 7 distinct Earth combat traditions, but combining them in ways that create entirely new forms." The holoscreen displayed Walker engaging a squad of Zig's Theory elite warriors. Her first move employed what humans called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, redirecting an opponent's superior strength. This flowed instantly into a strike pattern from Muay Thai, followed by footwork derived from boxing. When surrounded, she shifted to Krav Maga defensive techniques, then exploited openings with Wing Chun precision strikes. "Remarkable adaptation rate," noted combat specialist Nixval, watching from across the analysis chamber. "Most species struggle to master even one combat form. Humans not only learn multiple styles but combine them instinctively." The footage continued as Walker encountered different combat challenges. When faced with heavily armored opponents, she switched to Russian Sambo grappling techniques, targeting weak points in their exoskeletons. Against faster enemies, she employed capoeira movements, using deceptive rhythms to create openings. "That's not even accounting for her modern military training," Zarkax added, highlighting new segments. "Look here. She's integrated classical combat forms with advanced weapons, handling, zero-gravity tactics, and environmental manipulation techniques." The analysis chamber's AI struggled to process the combinations. Traditional combat algorithms, designed to predict and counter enemy movements, failed completely against Walker's adaptive style. Each engagement revealed new variations, new combinations that had never been seen before. "Show the training footage," Nixfall requested. The display split, showing Walker instructing other human soldiers. She moved between different combat forms effortlessly, demonstrating how traditional techniques could be modified for modern warfare. More importantly, she encouraged each student to develop their own unique combinations. They're not just preserving their combat traditions, Zarkax realized, mandibles clicking with excitement and dread. They're actively evolving them. Every human fighter becomes a potential source of combat innovation. The footage shifted to a battlefield where Walker's trainees engaged Zextheri forces. Each human displayed distinct fighting styles, combinations of traditional and modern techniques uniquely suited to their strengths. One soldier merged Pencaxilat with powered armor movements, while another combined Greco-Roman wrestling with zero-gravity maneuvering. Their adaptability extends beyond individual innovation, Nixfall observed. Look at how they learn from each other. Each successful combination gets adopted and modified by the group. Walker's voice came through the recording as she dropped into a defensive stance against multiple attackers. The old masters had it right. Adapt what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. What followed was a display of combat mastery that left the alien analysts in stunned silence. Walker moved through a series of engagements, each one showcasing different combinations of fighting styles. She adapted instantly to changing conditions, switching between forms with fluid grace, while incorporating modern technology and battlefield conditions into her techniques. Final analysis. Zarkax prompted the AI. Human combat evolution rate exceeds all known parameters. The machine responded. Each engagement produces new combinations. Traditional counter tactics become progressively less effective. Conclusion. Humans do not simply practice combat arts, they transform them into something new. Nixfall studied the final footage of Walker training a new group of soldiers, each one beginning to develop their own unique fighting style. We thought we could study and categorize human combat capabilities. Instead, we're watching them create entirely new forms of warfare. Every human soldier is potentially a new combat style waiting to emerge. And Walker? Zarkax asked. She represents something unprecedented, a living embodiment of human combat evolution, not bound by traditional forms or limited to single styles, but constantly adapting, combining, creating. She's not just a warrior, she's a combat innovator. The analysts watched as Walker demonstrated yet another unique combination to her students, her movements a perfect blend of ancient wisdom and modern lethality. In that moment, they understood a fundamental truth. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't just their mastery of combat, but their endless capacity to reinvent it. High Commander Zixtal's emergency transmission to the Galactic Council cut through secured channels with the highest priority encoding ever used. Their research facility, the most advanced combat analysis center in known space, was falling. Not to an invasion fleet or a planetary assault force, but to the very subjects they had been studying. Security containment failing on all levels, the facility's AI announced, its usual calm voice tinged with unfamiliar urgency. Human subjects executing coordinated breach protocols. Through the command center's displays, Zixtal watched their carefully constructed world unravel. Lieutenant Amanda Rodriguez had somehow synchronized the facility's environmental controls with Major Jack Thompson's makeshift weapons. The resulting chaos turned entire sections of the facility into death traps for their own security forces. Seal all research data, Zixtal ordered, their crystalline form vibrating with stress. Priority upload to the Council's secure archives. They must understand what we've learned before. An explosion rocked the facility's core. On the screens, Colonel Emily Hayes emerged from a supposedly sealed maintenance shaft, leading a group of freed human prisoners. They moved with terrifying efficiency, using tactics that combined their individual strengths into something greater than the sum of their parts. "Sir," Sub-Director Vex Moore reported, their voice trembling, Lieutenant Martinez has accessed our weapons development sector. He's improving our prototype systems faster than our engineers can lock them down. The security feeds showed Martins working with inhuman speed, his fingers dancing across alien interfaces as if he'd been born to them. Each weapon he modified became more deadly, more efficient, and more distinctly human in its application. Multiple breaches detected. The AI continued. Captain Winter's team has adapted facility environmental systems for combat purposes. Lieutenant Commander Walker is employing unprecedented combat techniques against security forces. Zixtal watched in horrified fascination as their most important findings about human combat capabilities played out in real time. Walker moved through their elite guards like water through sand, each movement a perfect fusion of ancient human combat arts and modern warfare. Winter's team turned the facility's own environmental safeguards into weapons, demonstrating the environmental mastery that had so impressed their researchers. The humans, Vexmore observed with dawning realization, they weren't just subjects of our study. They were studying us back, learning our weaknesses, our protocols, our technology. Everything we did to analyze them gave them more tools to use against us. The command center's doors, sealed as emergency protocols, engage. Through the screens, they watched Rodriguez coordinate the human prisoners with hand signals and subtle gestures, the same ones their behavioral analysts had documented as simple stress responses. Now they understood. The humans had been communicating in plain sight, planning this moment from the beginning. "Send the final report," Zixtal commanded, their voice steady despite the chaos. "The Council must understand. These humans, they're not just warriors. They're combat innovators. Every engagement makes them stronger. Every technology we expose them to, they improve. Every strategy we employ, they adapt to and overcome." The transmission began uploading as the facility's defenses crumbled. Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system she had somehow hijacked. "Thanks for the combat analysis, Commander. Your research helped us refine our techniques considerably." Thompson's voice followed. "Your medical studies of our capabilities were particularly useful. We understand our own strengths better now." "Don't forget the environmental training," Winters added, her team systematically securing sector after sector. "Really helped us optimize our adaptive responses." The last security cordon fell. Walker's voice carried a hint of professional respect. "Your combat simulations were excellent practice. We've incorporated several of your strategies into our own forms." Martinez's final edition carried a note of genuine gratitude. "And your weapons technology. Outstanding foundation for improvements. We'll put it to good use." As the command center's doors began to yield to the humans' assault, Zixtal transmitted their final analysis to the Council. "In our attempt to understand human combat capabilities, we have inadvertently accelerated their evolution as warriors. They learn from every encounter, adapt to every strategy, and improve upon every technology they touch. The humans are not just the most lethal fighters in the galaxy. They are continuously becoming even more formidable. The only way to win against them is never to fight them at all." End transmission. The doors burst open, and Zixtal faced the living embodiment of their research. Humans who had taken everything the galaxy's most advanced combat analysis facility could throw at them, and emerged stronger for it. In that moment, they understood the true price of victory, knowledge gained at the cost of creating an even more formidable adversary.